All right, and we are live. Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Bitter Brown Femmes. I am one of your hosts, Ruben, coming to you from Portland, Oregon.
And Cassandra coming to you from the borderlands. Do we have to say where we're from each time? I feel like
I think is that we need to let the people know that we've been social
okay.
distancing
That is true.
before it was cool, and also so because so they know like the behind the
Where we're
scenes.
coming from, yeah.
Yeah,
Like
because
my
a lot of times they're
perspective
like
is from here, yours is
West
a
Coast,
little all
baby.
over the place. That's okay.
But also, it's just like we ain't got no studio. Like we can't just be like hee hee ha ha.
Meet
Let's
you
like
there, friend.
record.
Yeah.
Yeah, meet you there, friend. Oh,
Meet you there at the studio. Yeah, no.
comadre, I'll see you at the studio.
Oh my God. This is why our podcast's so messy, amongst
Yeah.
many other things. But anyway,
At least
this
there's no
is
chirping birds anymore from both. Remember when we both lived in houses that had
oh,
birds?
the Mexican household. It was like the birds and then my neighbor's dogs and then
The
sometimes my
streets,
child and then
the fireworks.
the fire. Okay. But oh my god, I was gonna say this is the third consecutive Monday or episode that we have released. Like we are on it. We are on it. And we what we had to do to get here is just kind of take a trauma break, recollect ourselves, and cut out all the bullshit. That's why we don't have music. We don't have like before me and Ruben would be like, what are we going to talk about? Let's debrief for 3 hours because then we'd start talking
Literally.
about other things. And then by the time we record, like just a mess. So now we're like, we're live. Let's fucking go. Let's fucking do it. So we appreciate again everyone that listens. We appreciate y'all.
Yeah, tell your friends, hey, these bitches are back, and they are messier than ever.
Don't tell our haters because
No, tell our haters, hey, that's still a listen, girl. That's still a click, that's still a like, that's still an engagement, and that boosts us in the godforsaken algorithm.
that is true. Okay.
So come
All
through.
right.
Tell your colleges too that haters are back, you know? Especially
Yes.
if you're like, in the West Coast, in
Mhm.
a
Yeah, we've only
particularly,
been to the East Coast like twice,
I don't like the East
maybe.
Coast. I don't want to go to the East Coast.
Don't
Like,
send us there unless you're paying for us to be. Then we'll go.
and it's
But
cold. It's cold. It's too
yeah.
cold for me. I'm not meant to be over there. That's the reason. Oh, no. I just
But
hate being
also most
cold.
of most of our followers are from the West Coast, I think,
Yeah.
right? That's why we were always booked in like California mostly.
Yeah.
Anyway, but okay, let's
Anyway,
focus. Focus. Um all right. What do we want to jump into? Oh yes. Go ahead. Tell everybody the news.
yeah, today, February 17th, 2025, AD, Paquita, la del Barrio, um,
Paquita.
died. She got murked. Um,
How did she die?
I have
She
no
was
idea.
77, by the way. I thought she was old.
Yeah,
Like,
she
eh,
lived.
stop.
What? If I
Because
get
it's
to,
kind of like I was telling my best friend earlier, she's like, how does she die? And I was like trying to like look at the articles and I was like, once you're like at a certain point, it's kind of like, you know, you've lived and shit happens. So
it,
yes.
I don't know, it doesn't, Paquita, blah, blah,
They don't really
dies.
say. They're kind of just released a statement
Yeah,
and
she
I don't
offed
think
herself.
they're no, she did not. Stop. She didn't
That's
want to
not
live in this.
funny. Oh my
It's not
God.
funny. Stop it.
We take that very seriously here at Bitter Brown
Okay.
Femmes Inc. Uh,
People are mourning. I've seen so many, tributes to her, acknowledgments, whatever. And I get it. I get it. She's one of those Mexican icons, diva down.
Diva down.
Let me stop.
Diva.
It's not funny. Okay, no. Why I'm laughing is me and Ruben are like, we got to bring up the fact that she was homophobic a little bit. Like, I know people
She
don't want to
wasn't
hear
homo.
that.
It wasn't a little bit. It was a
It was
lot
a
of it.
lot. I just because I was like, what? And I was like, did she ever apologize? I don't think so. But there's this video that I was watching earlier that when they're like, so imagine there's a kid and he's an orphan and like there's two men that want to like provide for the child and she was like the kid should die. She like straight up was like, no, like this child should die before ever experiencing love from a gay couple. Like
Me,
it
she's
wasn't
so real
even
for
like a
that.
little homophobia, like a little homophobia is a treat. Like she was just like, absolutely not.
This
Fuck the
child should
children.
die. I mean, that's real. I mean, you know, I would also die before experiencing love from a gay couple.
Stop. Okay, no. Cut it out. No, but for real, she was quick with it too. She was just like, no,
She was ready. She was like locked and loaded
que
with
se
the
muera niño,
homophobia.
que se muera. Like, damn, bitch, okay. And it's not funny. It's not funny. Like, we're laughing, but it's not funny because shit like that actually reminds me of the child abuse and murder of children like Gabriel Fernandez. Because that was one of the most horrific cases of child abuse that I have read, right? And there's a documentary, and if you're not familiar, you can look up his name. But one of the things was that he was tortured by his parents because they thought he was quote unquote gay or that he was feminine. And he had two gay uncles that wanted to step in and take care of him. And they were like, no, like, we don't want that. So we'll take you, even though we don't really want you. And it led to his murder, you know? And so no, this shit is not funny, obviously. But just yeah, like just highlighting that this bitch really said that, and it's not funny. And it also reminds me of
Fucking Vicente
the
Fernandez.
Hernandez, who also
Who,
died a few years ago and was also
yeah.
being mourned because obviously he's also another icon. And you know, I get it, but he was
Mhm.
also tell go ahead and tell them about
Vicente Fernandez straight up died of like kidney or liver failure, I believe one of the two, for an ongoing issue he had. And that was curable, but he didn't want a kidney or liver transplant because there was no way he can ensure that the kidney or liver would not come from a gay person. Like,
it's kind of like the same with Paquita and Vicente. Like they were kind of on the same. Like we would rather have people die, myself included, than ever like you
touching
know
gay people,
touch gay
interacting,
people. Like
affording
yeah,
them any type of humanity. Yeah, it's like insane, like how like we normalize these things. On the other side of the coin, as we were preparing for this, I'm thinking about how like we brush aside or completely ignore like these two like Mexican icons like homophobia, and at the other end of the spectrum, like straight people like the greater Mexican culture like erases Juan Gabriel's queerness when they mourn him, right? And like there's something like insidious there um about, and it somehow goes hand in hand, right? Like ignoring homophobia, ignoring queerness, and in a way, ignoring homophobia is erasing queerness, right? These are not people we need to take care of. These are not people that deserve that. And yeah, it really fucks with me to see like all these progressive people mourning these homophobes. And I get it. Like it's not so easy for some people, but I am holding space to like, remind people of who these people were, who these icons were, right? And more importantly, like how embedded these icons were in the fabric of like Mexican American culture, right? These are not just people who exist in a vacuum. These are people who shaped for the culture for better or worse, right? And Paquita, in many ways, for better, right? She was like considered like a type of
misandrist.
yeah, and a type of like proto-feminism for
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people, right? That's Paquita's the first time a lot of people knew that it's okay to like hold men accountable for their shittiness, right? That was her big brand. And I sympathize also with like Paquita's life story that led to her in engendering this type of persona, right? This like man-hating, bad bitch. And it was because she endured a lot of abuse as a young woman. Um, but one can be both like a victim of like a systemic oppression, right? In her case, patriarchy, and also perpetrate another type of systemic oppression, right? That being homophobia. Um, and Vicente Fernandez can just rot in hell fully. I don't know. I can't think of anything that I'm like, oh yeah, I wouldn't be able to live without this, or like he made the world a better place because of this. And like, no, bitch, like this guy was a shithole through and through. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, that's
Yeah. But no, I agree in talking about because we can talk about Mexico, but as me and Ruben, we are Mexican American. We're here in the U.S., so we try to connect it to what is here, and it does obviously a lot of Mexican culture informs ours here because I mean technically we're still Mexican, our heritage, ethnicity, whatever,
yeah.
and
Would you say
obviously
it's because
machismo.
we're ni de aquí ni de allá? Would you say
Stop.
that?
You know what I'm saying. Yeah, how it influences and like machismo, number one. Even specifically here at the border, being at the border with Juarez, it's really frustrating how people obviously separate a lot of things from like, oh, that's Juarez and this is El Paso, and like these femicides only exist there. Machismo, the violent machismo only exists there, and it's like y'all should see, and people from El Paso know, but y'all should see the men out here. I know men are just men everywhere, but there's a special kind here in El Paso, and I know it's like directly tied to that. But anyway, that's another conversation. But machismo and homophobia have not just like in our families in our culture, but also within like the Chicano movement, which we were talking about a little bit last week, and I know a lot of people were interested on that conversation. So we can have
Yeah,
a little bit of that conversation now, I
yeah.
guess.
I mean, we've come a long way, right, since Chicanismo was like conceived and adopted, as a popular political framework or driving force for like Mexican Americans and other Latinx folks throughout the United States. But as some people are finding themselves, like some younger people are finding themselves radicalized for the first time and maybe being introduced to these Chicano 101 ideologies, it is my hope that they're not just absorbing everything that was in like the standard set Chicanismo, right? In the standard Chicano package, like that they are being also informed about criticisms of the movement, of problems within that movement, of advances, right? We're talking about a political framework and ideology that still envisioned like a promised land, right? Um, Seated Mexico, without any attention to the fact that these, what is so-called Aslan, right? The promised land, quote unquote Aslan, what makes up that entire region, like indigenous people have lived there, still live there. And just because like some Mexican Americans saw and other Latinx folks like saw political power, um, we don't just get to claim that as ours, right? Furthermore, like there is of course like a very machista attitude, even within every what's it called? Vanguard of that movement, particularly like the Brown Berets. So
Mm-hmm.
much so that like there's been multiple times throughout history where there's been splinter groups from that because they're like it began with like women, hence the formation of like the Chicanismo movement, right? The adoption of the X instead of the CH as a progression, a movement away from a patriarchal um uh framework. And then later on, like in the 2000s, a more queer fronted idea of what Chicanismo was, right? And of course, there was Gloria Anzaldúa who tried to carve space with, borderlands, which of course also had its issues. and was very
Black.
preoccupied with like racial mixtures, right? And mestizaje. Um, right? In case you didn't know, like mestizaje, like essentially like translates into miscegenation, right? And yet, and that was like the colonial goal, right? Like when Spaniards and other colonizers came to Latin America, they pushed this idea of like essentially, I think the slogan they used was like breeding out like the savage, right, out of the native folks throughout Latin America. And people were awarded through privilege, through other incentives to mix with white people, right? And that whole process is called mestizaje, it's called blancamiento in South America. And and that was part of the framework, right? That even the queering of Chicanismo called for, right? Or
Or
uh
like Sherry Moraga,
Sheri Moraga,
who's
yeah,
also trans, has, I don't know if she's changed her viewpoints or anything, but we know that she a few years back like refused to do like pronoun acknowledgments of any pronouns or even take that into consideration. And she's queer, she's butch. She's a
yeah.
lesbian. Like she's queer, she's butch, she's a lesbian. She's it's yeah. Um
She was
so
even
there's
worse than that. Like Sheri Moraga
I'm sure there
went,
was more, but that's what I
oh,
remember specifically.
she was like, oh yeah, Sheri Moraga, another, and these two that we've been particularly talking about were queer, are queer. Well, Gloria Handler
Mm-hmm.
was like dead as fuck, but Sheri Moraga's still around. Yeah, I haven't heard. The last thing I heard about her was a few years ago when she wrote like a little, I think it was like a blog or something or a small talk that was essentially like, um, oof, maybe rewind before this moment. First, there was like a time in she did a talk at the Queer and Trans People of Color Conference in Berkeley, I think 2016, when Shani Moraga was
Mm.
like, um, essentially that the LGBTs are not queer enough, that she knows a lot more queer straight people, and that we are making too much space for like trans people essentially, right? What she was like saying. And then later, I want to say like t before 2020. I don't know if she's still alive, but before 2020,
Sherry
she put
Moraga?
out,
Yeah.
yeah, Shadi Moraga put out like a little blog post where she wrote about like how she mourns her fallen butch sisters, right? She
Oh,
feels that at the time,
not the
she felt
L-word.
that like, yeah, she felt that we were losing too many butch lesbians to transgenderism, that too many butch lesbians were considering themselves men before, observing the or appreciating the beauty that is butch lesbianism. And I'm just like, what the fuck, girl?
Yeah,
Like,
that's a very popular rad femme thing that I was gonna say. I remember that scene in the L-word. Well, let's not talk about the L-word. So it's
I've
messy
never,
as fuck.
is that more recent or the first generation
No,
of
the
L word?
first that was a mess. Like rewatching the L word, I'm just like, oh my god, this is so bad. This is so bad, but it's so good. I love it.
Oh, it's so,
And
yeah.
they did. I haven't seen the set like the comeback of the L word. I know like they did acknowledge like, hey, like we fucked up, and people said that this like they did try to make amends for the second. I haven't seen the new one. As messy as the first one is, that is my
That's
that
my
is
mess.
that is still my shit. But that is exactly like with the trans character that it was just that only I don't even know why they would do them like that the entire show, but that was one of the tropes like you're not trans, like we're losing. They had of all people, they had Pam Grier say that it's not Pam Grier, bitch. Don't tie her up in this transphobic.
It just connected the
And
dots that Pam Grier is like the Pam Grier.
yes, and she is the one that's like we're losing a lot of our budget. Like, you're not even gay. Like, why would you even say this? Like, you just have a hot lesbian sister. That doesn't give you authority over that. Whatever. That's another conversation. But yes, the what else? Like, and we're bringing up the like Chicanismo because we were specifically had brought it up because I don't even know remember right now.
We're
Because
good.
someone had said it was like Israel. And let me be clear, I did share, okay, like a year ago, I did share this tweet that was like Chicanos are the, and let me see, because oh yeah, because this is what I shared. Someone said Aslan is just Chicano Israel, and I laughed. It was funny. But now people are really trying to make it, this
One to
thing
one.
like that. There really is like that, like Chicanismo is Zionism, and it's like we can have this conversation, which we're having right now about Chicanismo, without lying and acting like, yeah, Chicanismo, the nation state here that's backed by the US. Like, that's like,
Yeah.
no, it's not. It's not the same.
Yeah. And for, if this is the first time, if you're maybe like a known Latinx, maybe a Caucasian hearing about Chicanismo for the first
Mm-hmm.
time, Chicanismo began as like a political movement, around the civil rights era, where a lot of Mexican American students were trying to carve out a political identity akin to like the Black Panther movement. And a lot of, if not all of the Brown Berets, which is kind of like the vanguard of Chicanismo, if Chicanismo was a government, the Brown Beret was like their military more or less, and like their driving force, their like code of honor essentially was like taken directly from the Black Panthers. And it's a belief that, like Black power movements considered Africa home, right? That they were stripped away from. Chicanismo sought to claim that the southwest of the United States was kind of like their home, that is rightly theirs, right? So that was one of the founding ideologies, right? This homeland called Aslan, right? And in that way, people compare it to Zionism and their idea that Israel is the Jewish, homeland,
Mm-hmm.
right? Uh, never mind the fact that like, the reason that Israel exists as it does today is because of like, the United Nations post World War II. We're trying to like nobody wanted to host like all these Jewish refugees, and so they were like, well, we've been trying to have like a Western like stake in the Middle East, so this spot makes sense, right? Overtaking Palestine, and that's where they made all these Jewish refugees like seek home, right? Never mind the fact that there was already a people, the Palestinians, who lived there, right? So Zionism is like this Western backed, it's not just an ideology, but like an actual,
Like
like,
settler colonialism. It
yeah,
is,
that's
it's
settler
backed by
colonial
like world
power.
powers. Yeah.
Yeah, that is like
So
actively committing genocide, right? Like killing people who were, even as I critiqued the idea of Aslan, right, for ignoring the fact that indigenous people already live there, like nowhere in Chicanismo was like calling for ethnic cleansing, right?
mhm.
Like that's not part of the program. Like it had its, some racism baked into this upholding of mestizaje. It did not have like like this ideology that would then clear millions of people from their homeland, right?
Yeah, or most importantly, the power to even do that. Because I mean, like even if I don't know, the Chicano movement sat up here and said that, like, okay. And that's not to say people can't do stuff, but it's not like, yeah, it's not like they're going out and like stealing people's homes and like killing people and or assaulting people. Um, so yeah, so that
Yeah.
I don't even know where that, I guess that's where it stemmed from. And like we understand like the comparison. And like I said, I did like it is funny, like haha, but now y'all are serious. And it's not now the tweets are serious, like, and it's not that. So
Yeah,
yes, we
like
can address this concept of Aslan and even the entire Chicana movement being machista, being queerphobic, being just a lot of things, but it is not that. It is not equivalent to Zionism or Israel for that matter.
yeah, and I'm like another thing too is like Chicanismo came from people, right, to fight, you know, the oppressive government, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it's like like a community-based like political movement that was, created to combat like US oppression, right? Zionism, on the other hand, is like an oppressive system enacted to oppress people, right? These are like opposite ends of spectrum ideologies, one fully backed, one created to oppress people, right? In the guise of empowering another oppressed people, right? The Jewish community. Um, and that all of this, because let's say we fast forward 100 years and this podcast episode is in the archives of the Library of Alexandria or whatever, and Chicanismo becomes something else. Like all of this said, now that we've addressed this, like do not don't make Chicanismo about ethnic cleansing. Um, because otherwise, yeah, we would be eating crow and well dead. But it is all of that said, like I consider myself a Chicano, being Mexican American, a person of Latinx descent, whatever that means, right? Descendant of Latin America. Like identity is fucking tricky, right? Especially as someone who doesn't believe in like nation states, right? And Chicanismo, the Chicano identity has always made sense for me in the way that like the queer identity has made sense for me, right? Queer being like an identity that doesn't just have to do with sexuality, but like political ideology, being against the oppressive norm. Um, but it's not without its issues, right? Chicanismo, the Chicano identity. Um, yeah.
Yeah. And also we had been talking I we we talk a lot of shit or whatever, but we definitely are like if you went through this concha phase, like you're or if you're in that concha phase right now, like you're this bad person. Like we've that's what we're talking about. We've all at least me and y'all
And
know.
what's a concha face? What's a concha face to you?
So my thing is like when a lot of people come into Chicanismo, and I've seen this because I don't know if y'all remember, I don't even know if we had Bitter Brown Friends at this time, but I took a Chicano studies class at my local community college a few years ago. And it was very interesting being in that class because in my brain, I was like, okay, I already know all this stuff. Aye, aye. But all the other five girls in my class were fresh out of high school. And I think they just ended up in that class because sometimes you gotta take a fucking class. And they didn't never had heard the word Chicano. Like it was like they were coming into this thing brand new. So it was very interesting to me seeing how they reacted to a lot of this information from the beginning of the class to last. And it really is like empowering. And I think that's what draws a lot of us to Chicanismo because for so long we're here, we're going to school, and like we don't know a lot about our history. We're just the only thing I feel maybe is like Cesar Chavez, which not even to get into Cesar Chavez right now, but that's about it. It's like there's farm workers and his name's Cesar Chavez, and that's it. There's that's I mean, even with regular history in the US, obviously we get like there's slavery and there's MLK and civil rights, right? So obviously everyone else is not getting a lot of education. So going into Chicanismo, you do feel empowered and you're like, oh my God, like I experienced racism or like this history happened. And it is very empowering, and I like that. I think young people should be empowered and drawn into the movement that way, and like learning their history and like that they have power and et cetera, et cetera. But like my issue or like the issue with Chicanismo is like that is all, that is it. That I feel like that's kind of where it always stops. It's like, okay, you're empowered, you're oppressed, but you're empowered. Like go out there and be proud of your culture. And that's where we get where I'm talking about now. Like, let me wear some concha earrings, let me kind of like be very proud in my culture because I have something to prove because I'm empowered now, whatever. And it's like there's no critical thought beyond that. There's no like, okay, we're oppressed, but also how do I oppress other people? How do women fit into this? How do queer people fit into this? Why did the Chicano movement fall? Right? Why did women leave the Chicano movement and start their own thing? Like, where is like, there's not like nothing has changed in like since the 70s. And like, yes, little things, like you said, there have been some progress, and it's all thanks to like the students at universities that put that forth and try to make that change. So shout out to y'all, but it's not enough. As Kendrick Lamar has said, like it's just not enough. Like, and so I think we've always struggled
He
with
said
this
that about
question. Like,
Chicanismo?
no, it's just a song. No, like, yes, he did. Because he's an ally to the Mexicans in LA. What was I going to say? Okay, so it's kind of like we've had this conversation where, like, do we just do away with Chicanismo and Chicanisma or do we try to fix it and try to make it better? Or is it just like it's done? And another thing is like Chicanismo had its moment. It wasn't all bad, right? Especially within like education. But again, it just fell short. And I think a lot of it is because it is rooted mostly in like machismo. And like men don't really care. They're like, I'm a brown man. That's it, period. And the white man's oppressing me. And there's nothing else outside of that. So people that yes are coming into Chicanismo, yes, again, it's empowering, it's great, you learn so many things, but you need to be critical, even about these authors that they teach about, Ansaldúa, about like Ana Castillo, about stop, about like Cesar Chavez, who was also like calling border patrol on Mexican people. You know what I mean? Like Dolores Huerta.
Oh
Because
God.
who wants to cancel Dolores Huerta? Not me.
Me. I've been on this mission for years now.
um, but you know what I mean? It's like we can
Ever since she
take
told me, ever since she
stop.
told me to yell out, "We are all black, we are all
Oh
African"
my
at a
God.
student
Oh,
conference in 2015.
so it's like we've been, yeah, you can like be like, oh, I appreciate this thing that they did, or I read this book and I'm going to take this, but the rest of it, don't, no, thank you, right? And like, or take, I don't know, just have a more critical lens that like just because these people are like wrote about the border, like wrote about being Chicana, like it doesn't mean that that's their right and there's no room for critique or growth there.
Yeah. Um, like with all things, I guess take what's useful to you, delete the rest, criticize the rest.
Be open to criticism yourself because I know me and Ruben, me more than Ruben, like I've been dragged, y'all know I've been dragged and canceled online, and sometimes it's petty and it's not real, but other times it was real, and a lot of it stems from my time of being in Aslan, like just in my Concha phase, because I was like, no, like I'm empowered, like, and there was no like I didn't have the ability to see past that. You know what I mean? Like I was just like, this is it. There's nothing else that I need to learn. There's nothing else I need to think about. So rightfully so getting dragged, right? For a lot of these things. So yeah, I don't know.
Getting dragged.
Getting I hope y'all
Damn.
don't have to get dragged
Oh
to
yeah, that
see
too.
the
We're telling you
light.
this so you don't get dragged
So
too,
you don't get dragged.
girls.
I want y'all to get dragged, but maybe if you do get dragged or someone's like, hey, this shit is erasing indigenous people, like whatever like the call in is, like don't like just kind of sit with that and like I don't know.
Damn, I've gotten some online whoopings sometimes. Sometimes it's not even my fault. Sometimes people are just whack. And I'm gonna say
Yeah,
that
sometimes people are definitely whack.
on my end,
Stop,
I've
you're like,
you
on
know
my
how
end I didn't do anything wrong.
I'm innocent at all times. Um, no, the biggest dragging I got was when I was like, I made this joke when that Lizzo song was out about like just took a DNA test. Turns out I'm a bad bitch or something like that. I
Hmm.
forgot the lyric. But uh I like made a meme that was like just took a DNA test and it shows that I'm of mixed heritage from Latin America and that doesn't give me the right to claim indigeneity like Chicanismo would like you to believe. And I got pretty whooped by all the Chicano 101s, Nueva Slan, um,
Okay. Oh my
dance
God, that's not where I thought that was going. I thought you were gonna say the
folklorico.
Lizzo fans were mad for some
No,
reason.
no, I don't even think I register. I don't even know who a Lizzo fan is anymore.
Mm.
But no, the Chicano 101 Aslan population, the what's that called? Not folklorico dancing, the Aztec dancing
They don't like that
community.
one. They don't like that one.
No, they
The
didn't. That not. But they got my ass for days. Like, oof. Yeah.
Well, they were bullying me for days too until I changed my name.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
Anyways, we have to wrap it up soon.
we gotta wrap it up. But yeah, obviously we've been talking about Chicanismo and all of this for years, so obviously it'll come up again. Um, but we did want to end on. I'm sorry, no.
Um,
Real quick, sorry, before I forget, there was a plane that crashed.
the plane that
There's a
crashed today,
there was
February
another plane that
17th,
crashed.
2025, AD.
So how many planes has it been? And this was
I
not in the US, this was Canada, right?
but it came from the US. It was Delta Airlines.
Oh, okay. Oh my God.
Yeah, four since January 20, like four instances at least. Somebody put
Since January
together like a little
20th?
collage. Yeah.
Oh my fucking God.
Hasn't been a month yet. We're averaging one a week.
Oh my God. They fired all the queer people.
So essentially,
All the
yeah,
woke people. There's no more
since
woke people flying
Trump got it,
planes.
like the transportation department or whatever, there's been four plane crashes in the US or apparently in Canada, but a plane from the US. And this latest one landed upside down, which I've never seen in my
And
life.
there's no, I don't think they said anybody died, which is obviously
Yeah,
amazing
thank
and good. And I'm
goodness.
glad, thankfully. But I'm like, wow. Like, even just experiencing that is traumatizing. Like, I would never get on a plane ever again.
I mean, yes, traumatizing. I would come out of that bitch like I'm about to get my lick. Like I'm about to make some
That's true. That is true. That is true. Someone flies out to their university.
Delta to Canada, please.
And we'll just buckle up. Mine.
This
this
is
is for
not.
my this is for my son. I want him to go to college. Okay. Okay.
But yeah, people are saying that like, or A, they gutted the transportation department or whatever that Mayor Pete used to overlook. Um, but also like, Trump is making it so that like federal agencies that have any type of DEI initiatives get like gutted as well. And people are like, well, this is a result like of not having A, like a well-funded transportation department and B, like a DEI department because these are like people think that like DEI is just like this person of color gets a job before the white man, but it's like no, it's like diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? It's all these businesses, corporations, federal, you know, departments, whatever, who are making a conscious effort to hire qualified people of different backgrounds because like diversity, equity, and inclusion is an asset. Like we it's not just about bringing a person of color who has been disenfranchised from these industries, right? And kept away from them at the for the benefit of white people who a lot of times we found are less qualified, but because of of racism that's ingrained in hiring processes and people's biases on their own, they've been uplifted, right? But it's also about like all these diverse people that they're bringing in bring diverse perspectives, experiences that lead to new types of solutions, new types and of new types of like ways of engaging these different industries, right? Which bring about, you know, new types of like advances that would not have been possible before. Um, and so yeah, I'm not saying that the planes are crashing because of anti-woke, but you
I
know,
am. I am saying
oh,
I need to see the pilot. I need him to have blue hair. I need them to have blue hair.
they them. You
They,
know,
them,
non-binary,
pin.
stop going to barista school, start going to piloting school.
Hmm.
Let's talk about that.
Another thing, okay, that we'll talk about next time because we're running out. But I did, on touching on that, I did want to talk about Google. kind of removing like pride and like all these other holidays. And the conversation of maybe, I'm sorry, I don't know. I don't know. Is it a good thing or bad thing for pride to be not so commercialized and accessible? But also, it's like both, I feel, right? Like fascism and we're like regressing, but also it's like a chance for maybe us to kind of step away from what pride has become over the years. But we can talk about that and
I mean,
another.
I have 5 minutes, girl, and I'm gonna
Okay, I
say
mean, go
this.
ahead. What do you think about
It
that?
would be a net positive if these baguettes got radicalized because of
Mm,
it.
exactly. Yeah, that's
But I
true.
don't trust that the same population who's so willing to throw trans people under the bus, right? Um, and not just metaphorically in instances such as the fact that like the T and the Q have been removed from like all federal websites, right? Including
Hmm.
the Stonewall like
Yes.
the national landmark page where when it's like if it wasn't for trans people we wouldn't even have Stonewall. Like but you're trying to remove them from that. And I don't trust that the same population that's so complacent in this erasure of trans and queer people from the LGBTQIA like acronym and community are gonna become radicalized because, Absolute Vodka is no
Mm.
longer providing merch at their pride parade, right? It's gonna take something major, like I'm sorry to say it, but it's gonna take something like them removing gay marriage for a lot of people to wake up. And like remember that it wasn't too long ago that like all these like rights were considered like debatable, right? People have said that even the liberals, like Obama didn't come into this bitch like, gay as hell. Like he passed like gay marriage like on his way out.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think that it could be a positive if people were radicalized. I don't know if that's gonna happen as quickly as it needs to happen. And until then, I think that this is one instance where maybe corporations did need to have Pride merch in this bitch, and maybe I was wrong about saying Pride was too corporate. Maybe it needed to be a little corporate, not corporate enough that they let all these banks and these
Cops, mostly.
fucking military in this bitch, but enough that we did get some Absolute Vodka merch.
Hmm. Yeah, I'll keep thinking more about that. But no, I agree though, because I'm like thinking like for example in this summer, what is Pride gonna look like, right? And it's also
I know it was gonna look like for
just a lot of
me.
people don't care, even within the LGBTQ community. Like a lot of people do not care about trans people themselves. You know what I mean? Like they are transphobic themselves. So it's like, oh, they removed the Q2, okay, whatever. As long as they have gay marriage, like you said, because that was like when gay marriage happened and people were acting like that was it. Like that was the end of gay rights and gay rights, right? Because gay rights and gay liberation, queer liberation, trans liberation are very two different things. But liberals were very just like gay marriage, we're good, marriage equality. And it's like, well, first of all, there is no marriage equality. Like when we're talking about disabled people getting married, for example, right? Like they will lose their benefits if they get married. So where's the equality for them, right? So it's not even that, but I think especially privileged gay people, cis people, that was like their goal. Like, okay, we're married and now we're equal. Now we're like straight people and that's it. But now that
I,
Trump is back in office and now that there is like obviously more hatred being aimed at the gay community, it's like I wonder what it will be like during Pride Month. Like what will be the response? And I know it's gonna be corny as fuck, probably.
I don't know. I'm gonna be lit, girl, making out with a
Hopefully not.
man or
Hopefully,
two.
like I said, some of us start throwing shit. But I feel like it will be a lot of this like love is love bullshit that I'm just like we're past that, bro.
Yeah. What'd you say last time? That was iconic. You said something like, "Stop grabbing that sign and grab a break, bitch."
Like dead. I'm serious. But
Meanwhile,
yes.
like all this shit has like tangible fucking consequences, right? Like in the last week or two, like two trans masculine people, trans men were murdered, like in horrific ways, right? And a part of what contributes to that is the fact that like we're leaving trans people like to fend for themselves. We're not offering community protection, even voicing support. Like that lack of protection for trans people fuels all these people to say like, hey, like these are unprotected people. I can do with them as I want, right? And it's just I'm reminded of many instances like Sylvia Rivera is always like a guiding force for me, not only because of all the work she did throughout her lifetime, but also how messy she was and how unafraid she was to call out the bullshit. And I'm reminded of two instances, like one in like the 70s, like almost a decade after Stonewall, uh, at a Christopher Street parade, which was like the proto Pride parade. She climbed the stage because they wouldn't let her speak. They were trying to push her out, and she was like, "Bitch, I like went to jail for gay liberation, but you're about to like just throw me aside like the moment that gays get any kind of like advances." And then I think again in I think it was like 2001 when gay marriage was back like in the conversation. She did like a talk where she was like, the problem is the Human Rights Campaign. It is the HRC because they're trying to sanitize the LGBT community to only be about gay marriage and how, love is all that unites us. When it's like, no, like love has nothing to do with my identity as a trans person. I don't think she used the word trans, but I think she used like transsexual or something like that. But like she once again talks about how like people who are HRC gay liberals like are very ready to throw trans people under the bus for any minuscule advancement towards, their own liberation at the expense of trans people. And like I just want to remind all the other cis gays that like bitch, it's gonna be us next. Like it's gonna be you next. Like it's gonna be like right now, you feel like maybe you have to throw trans people under the bus because it's like attention off you and because you think I'm not like those freaks, quote unquote. I'm not like I'm normal. I just like my same gender or some bullshit. But like no, bitch, like at the end of the day, to these motherfuckers, these conservatives, like you're a faggot. Like in derogatory. Like not a faggot, like that's my
Derogatory.
faggot, like that's my homie. Like not like that. Like no, you're literally a faggot. Like you need like they want you out of this fucking picture. So like no amount of you like catering to them by throwing trans people under the bus is gonna help this situation. So like get it together, bitches, because people are literally being murdered.
Yeah. No, everything you said, yeah. Sorry, I was like trying to, don't forget to say whatever. But one thing I think a lot of it is, yes, like we're throwing trans people under the bus. Sometimes maybe, like you said, like for like for it not to be on us, right? Like we're scapegoating like trans people when it could be us next. But also just like I think a lot of like cis queer people just need to look at their own bullshit. But I also I don't know if that made sense, but I also think that a lot of liberals, cis or not, or queer or not, straight or not, is like they don't. I feel like they see maybe trans people as like they're getting bullied, right? It's like this thing where it's like we're like trans people are just getting hated on, right? Like they're just words, but they don't really think about the material conditions of like what it is to be a trans person and how it affects how a lot of trans people are poor. Like they cannot get jobs, they cannot get healthcare, they cannot get housing. Like they are murdered, right? It's not just like, oh, people don't like trans people, like people don't want to see it. People like no, like it's not just like words that people are throwing around, right? And like these like it's like very material conditions, like if you're talking about class solidarity, if you're talking about anything like that, always includes and should center like the most vulnerable, and like that is trans people. And like I think that's one of the issues that people try to disconnect. Again, like ties back to these little phrases like love is love. What the fuck does that even mean, bitch? Like who the fuck?
Girl, when I be
Like
fucking
we're having
men,
a
there ain't no love
fight.
there. There is no love when I'm
There's
butt
like
fucking.
this tweet that's like, y'all want me to fight for love, but I'm fighting against poverty, bitch. I'm not here to fight for love. I don't give a fuck. Like, but that's also like a whole other conversation on like what we're talking about love, right? Because love is radical, it is resistance, it's whatever, whatever. That's a whole other conversation. But I'm just like, yeah, we're way past that. We're way past gay marriage and love is love and oh, stop being mean to my trans friend and respect their pronouns. Like, no, bitch, like it's time, like I said, it's time to pick up a brick. Like, you want to disrespect my trans friend, bitch? Like, no. If there's trans people where you work, if there's trans businesses, like how can you actually show up for trans people more like other than like these little, memes that are like pronouns or whatever. Like, what the fuck is that doing? And like, yes, on some level, obviously, we should respect everyone's like, obviously, you know what I mean. But it's like a lot more than that. And just to go back to, you mentioned, I don't know if there was another trans man that you brought up, but there was like, first there's a, a a story of a trans man. He's a 24-year-old from Minnesota, and his name was Sam Nordquist. And he was brutally murdered, and his body was found last week. And um, they got like the five people that did that. They're kind of like we're still investigating if it's a hate crime. Um, and obviously, there's like some details that I've seen that are very terrible, to say the least, very graphic. So that, and then the same day, actually, there's like a 29-year-old Tahiri Broom, who was a black trans woman who was also murdered by a man that she met up with like on a dating app, and obviously he's been apprehended and like is being charged. But these are like real life, this is like real life shit. It's not just like, oh, this person didn't want to respect my pronoun and my name, right? It's like that's like the bare fucking minimum that we're doing, and we're not doing shit. We're not doing shit. And I'm including myself that obviously because I'm like a cis woman. Like, what are we doing?
I'm also thinking about like how, like, like, how do I say this? I think that even the trivialization of like pronouns is like part of the issue, right? Because if people
Mm,
don't respect the most basic thing, right? Like your name, your identity, how you want to be even talked to and about, then how the fuck do we expect them to respect any other part of you, right? Or any
mm,
other part of trans people? Like, so
exactly.
to me, these are one and one. And I'm not saying like die on the hill of like pronouns, but like know why it matters. Like I
Mm,
know personally for me, like I've come to the point where like I don't really care about my pronouns, but I'm kind of I'm like genderqueer, kind of know that it ultimately doesn't matter because I could identify as genderqueer, but I'm seen as like a cis man, sometimes masculine. But
sometimes.
yeah, but bitch, somebody said that my voice changed recently, and I'm like,
Who said
what?
that?
I don't know. On YouTube, somebody said my voice
Hmm.
changed.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, like it matters for not my voice changed, but like respecting pronouns because it's like that's the fucking bare minimum, girl. Like get it together and know that like when you're fighting for people to respect pronouns, it's not just about you know what you're calling somebody, but about like basic seeing somebody's basic humanity. Um, yeah, and that is it
Yeah.
for
So
me.
yeah, that is it for us. And I'm sorry we kind of jumped into a lot of things, but I hope I remember us always like sharing like the meme that's like, did that make sense? Because it didn't make sense to me, but I hope it
I
made
don't
sense to
care.
you all. It made
They don't
sense to
make
you all.
sense.
But we
And you know
just
what?
wanted
We are a book to be interpreted, right? We require some
Mhm.
critical thinking.
Yeah, I'm sure. But we did want to end it on that, and we will be posting their GoFundMe's for Tahiri Brown and for Sam Nordquist. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that last name, but um aside, again, there's like a thing that we're talking about, not just trans people, but like I know like black people that are murdered by the state police brutality. It's like we want to show up for people when they're dead, right? Like when these GoFundMe's come out for their family, for their burial, and those are important. But it's also like we need to be showing up for people when they're alive. So yes. Um,
And
that's
with
all for
that,
today.
what's the thing that made you less bitter last
You
week?
know what? I was thinking about this question. I'm like, it's so weird to say because like I feel like now like we're being more consistent with the episodes. I'm like, bitch, I don't know. Nothing good has happened to me in like since the last week that I talked to you. So I'm just gonna have to go with I don't even know.
You don't have a good sandwich last week?
A good sandwich. I did not, but I today was my day off, and that was my I guess because like I've been working every day, and I'll sometimes I'm just like I don't know what to do with myself when I have a day off, and then I have to tell my brain like it's okay to not do shit, you know? Like it's okay to just lay in my bed and not do anything. So I guess that. And also the sun, per usual. The sun really helps. So, oh, I experienced an earthquake Friday. There
Like a
was like a,
1.2?
yeah, so it wasn't even here in El Paso. It was like kind of like the, what is it called? Like when it kind of
The
reaches over here. I think it was
Borderlands?
like in,
Oh, aftershock?
yeah, like Midland or Odessa. I don't know, but I was a little high. And so I thought I was tripping and my wall was kind of moving and I was like, what is happening? And it was weird. I don't know. It was just like so weird. I felt like out of my body. No one felt it as intensely as I did, by the way, because I was a little,
She's an
you
empath.
know. And I even got up afterwards. I was like, was that the wind? And I was like, no, that doesn't make sense. Like, why would that be? Like, I don't know. Until people started like being like, did everybody feel that? And I was like, oh my god, oh my god, I experienced an earthquake. So I thought that was cool, actually.
Now you know how
So maybe
Californians
that made
feel.
me less bitter because now I just need to see a tornado, and I will die
Oh, I hope I
happy.
never. And a tsunami too, bitch.
No, I don't care about tsunamis. I think tornadoes are the best. Are the best.
Do you have a basement? Have you ever lived anywhere with a basement?
No, there's like yeah, no, there's not much
Yeah,
happening in El Paso other than wind.
yeah. I don't know. I don't know. Californians don't have basements, so we would not do well in that department.
What
Um,
what made you less bitter? How was your birthday?
Fantastique. I guess that I had a really good birthday. I turned
Good.
36 on the 15th of February.
Oh my god, I'm
Uh,
older than you. I am. Okay.
yes, bitch. You always
Okay.
forget.
I always forget. Yeah.
Um, and I just see you as like a big sister figure, so that makes sense for me. Um, but my birthday was fantastic. I played rugby against a team who I had played once before, and they were when I played with a gay rugby team, and they were really cruel back then. They were cruel this time too, but back then they called like three of us faggots. They like dislocated some guy's shoulder, broke like with like step on people's hands with their cleats and like broke someone's finger. Um,
Is
and
that
this
like
you can't do that. Like you
I
can't do
know, but
that.
I'm like, so they didn't do any, they didn't get punished. I
No,
need
they
them
got
punished.
they went like yeah, we need them jailed. No longer
Jail,
an abolitionist.
abolitionist jail.
Yeah, but no, they got like not suspended. They were on probation for like uh
So they were straight, like straight men.
yeah, they were a straight team. Yeah, the queer leagues play with the non-queer leagues until it's tournament time. But yeah, I played with them with my new team, who's not like a queer team, but I did really
We're in the
good.
bisexual team.
I mean, some of these guys. No, straight men are so gay though.
Are
Um,
they?
yeah, but I scored like within the first. I scored the third try, which is like a goal of the day.
Awesome.
Uh, and it was in the snow, bitch. Like every time I got
I
tackled or
saw
tackled somebody,
absolutely not.
I like I like tapped out, not because I was tired, but because I legit I could not feel my right foot like at all. There was an invisible like it was a limb that had no use. And my hands, I could not feel them anymore. Um, and like I literally could not like feel my hands. And so I need to tap out. And yeah, but we won. So that was fantastic. And then I went out partying with my friends later that
Was
day.
that on your actual birthday? Like the
Yeah, on the
game?
fifth.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
That is a good birthday.
Yeah. And and but the thing that and so that was a great day. I had a great birthday, one of the best birthdays. It was a good week, despite the fact that I was prepared for the worst because it snowed in Portland finally. And snow has usually not gone well for me and for Portland. But this time it was all right. We didn't have any major mental or equipment breakage like last year when my pipes burst and I woke up with my kitchen and my living room flooded. Yeah. So that's what made
Well,
me like
I
bitter.
am glad you had an amazing birthday and that you beat the streets,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Gay power.
Thanks, gay power.
Gay power.
Yeah.
All right, but we shall see you all next week then.
All right, y'all. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.